for our listeners, Joe, you're a lifelong health and wellness enthusiast. But more importantly, I think you're known as a conqueror of obstacles.
Right.
You've, had a traumatic brain injury. And I want you to kind of unpack what that's like, both how it happened, but also I've got a number of friends that had traumatic brain injuries. Like maybe that should tell me something about myself. No,
You're hanging out with the right crowd.
Exactly. Yes, it's true that most of the people, a lot of people that I hang out with. So clearly, no joking aside, a brain injury is a life transforming event that happens to people. It can change physical capability. It can change your personality. It can change a lot of things. What happened? How did you get a brain injury? And then what was that whole process? And then maybe how did it contribute to what you're doing today?
Yeah, Wade. And it's interesting, right? Because it's something that I packed so deep into my chest or wherever. I didn't talk about it for a long time. I just started talking about it kind of as I kind of get into more mindfulness and yoga, and I started hitting some real roadblocks in my meditation. I had to unpack some of this stored trauma in my own body in order to progress in my own journey, and sharing, I think, is an important part of that. So when I was a younger man, I'm 36. This was about 20 years ago. This is a freak accident, man. A permanent basketball hoop fell and landed on top of me and nearly killed me, cracked this side of my head open, blah, blah, blah. I was in, this happened about 40 minutes outside of Boston. And I was brought to the nearest hospital. They didn't have the right stuff. I got brought to, so within, 24 hours, of course, I was knocked out. And there's a whole bunch of, trauma just from this experience. And I could kind of dive deep into any facet of this. But I think, it was an interesting experience, blah, blah. I got this, brain surgery. They tweezed out the skull fragments that were in my brain. They patched me up. The interesting thing is, I think as a parent, and I have a 6-month-old baby, he's my first child. And I just I can't imagine we were walking in the woods, an acorn fell, landed on his leg, and he let out a little bit of he was just startled. With that, I was like, where did that come from? What does it? And so I can't even imagine what my parents went through, right? When your child is in this state and you don't know where they're going to come out. And my dad, went a certain direction. My mom kind of dealt with it in her own way. But I think following this injury, it was a really interesting time for me, because a big part of my recovery ended up being and I don't know how much personal stuff you want here, but ended up being,
go for it. How
do I prove to my parents that I'm okay? Because
because they were so concerned about the damage. What damage did you actually happen to you? What happened?
So, this side of my head is now basically constructed of plates and things like that. So this side of my head was kind of collapsed in. And again, we had obviously all sorts of a big mess to clean up and a skull to rebuild, and
Jesus.
And it was the type of thing where, we weren't quite sure what was going to happen. And the funny thing is when I woke up after the surgery, already knowing what was going on, I began that journey, and that had a massive impact on my home life, my relationship with my parents, my personality, and so it ended up creating a scenario where, I didn't show a lot of emotion for the rest of my teenage and adult life. I kept things in, and that leads to some pretty challenging stuff. And the bigger thing, Wade, is that it took about 10 years for a lot of the issues to begin to manifest. So, quickly after this trauma, after I got through and I was, walking and, doing all these different activities and coming back to quote normal, there were little signs and symptoms over the course of the next decade that everything wasn't sunshine and rainbows, but we were thinking up, oh, well, that was from, your jaw, problem, your neck pain, like this is from your braces. And that was from that time you got hit with a baseball. And, and so that's what you do. And then you end up finding some good docs. And in my 20s, I started to have so many issues that the wheels started to come off. And, I visited some docs. A lot of docs didn't really have any answers for me. But then one neurologist was basically like, look, man, Michael J. Fox has bad luck. Muhammad Ali got hit in the head too many times. That's kind of where you're kind of headed. And by 30, I expect you to be in a pretty, Parkinsonian-like state. And
Wow.
Diagnosed me with something called dystonia, which is essentially this muscle tightness on the right side of my body. So when you get hit on the right side of the head, blood and swelling and everything pools kind of on the other side. And some of the damage ends up being reflected on the opposing side of the body to the damage, right?
And then there's probably all fascia shifts from these surgeries and all that can have all sorts of impingements and neurological patterning. And I think a lot of people don't recognize how, when you do some sort of surgery, let alone on your head, it can impact literally everything right to your toes.
On everything. And, it was interesting because I remember for years after this, and I've got a pretty substantial scar on my head. I got it covered up with my hair pretty good. But for years after this injury, I explained it. I got these like marbles in my head, right? And so like I could I've got these like lumps.
Jesus.
And it was so crazy, man, because when they stitched me up, and my dad, it was funny, my dad was so traumatized by this thing. He like took the picture and hid it and I never saw it again. But after this surgery, man, like they used this like wire stitching to like close me up, right? And there was these like bubbles, right? These like, cause this wire is like clinched pretty tight. And so when I had this scar tissue and this disaster worked on with a qualified therapist for the first time, like my whole face felt different. Like it released so much just stored, you can imagine, because when you're stitching up a head, what are you doing? You're pulling skin. It's like you're giving me a facelift on the right side. And anyone that's, got a, Christmas sweater and you get a pull on one side, you keep pulling, you see the mess that it creates. So you're absolutely right. And a lot of that physical, that fascial kind of pull caused a lot of pain in my neck, a lot of discomfort, obviously, but a lot of pain, a lot of injuries, a lot of, in the gym, just, repetitive injuries, just, I can't do anything. This is actually what led me down into Tom Myers. I took a Tom Myers course. We have a mutual friend, Paul C.H.E.K. I went through my first C.H.E.K, event back in, 2007 or so.
Right. And he's amazing.
All these things, they led me down this road. Right. And like you said, it's like everything happens for a reason. And, this led me to everything that I preach today. I've been keto or pretty close to it since, 2007, because that's the epilepsy diet. That's what brain injury folks do.
Yep.
And so whether it's fasting, and I, created this, event called RUNGA, and that was basically therapy for me, because one of the huge components of brain injury is, that cumulative stress load. So overwhelm, it's easy to get overwhelmed. It's easy to get claustrophobic. It's, there's a lot of obviously attention problems. There's a lot of, and so the kind of recipe to staying healthy and recovering and living a productive life is you've got to keep that cumulative load down. You got to keep the number of things you're thinking about, the number of people you're spending time with, the stress from your nutrition, the movement practice. All these things have to be dialed in, because there's a big liability if they're not, right? Because the wheels can start to spin off far more easily than maybe somebody that's got more resilience or more kind of room beneath the ceiling of what becomes highly dysfunctional or destructive. So I've gone through a couple of little journeys, after the, Michael J. Fox diagnosis. I went into a pretty dark place and left the country and, didn't know where I was going to end up or what I was going to do with myself, but ironically found some really cool practices. So anyways, everything happens. It's not a, I don't wish it didn't happen. That's the irony, right? It's just the way it is. And so, yeah, I think we're all put here for a reason. And I think a lot of the lessons that injury led me to have taught me so much, that have helped me help countless others. And that's it, man.
Amazing story. And you'd never know it when you're talking to or communicating with you. So it's pretty impressive. Like when you talk about a lot of the things that you talk about, self-reliance and being empowered in health and fitness and finding your tribe. One of the things I think is really interesting when people check out your bio and your website, which you put all the links in here at the end of the interview, you're someone who does the Spartan Race. Okay.
Formerly,
I want for our
formerly.
I get it. I get it. I want people to know what the heck is the Spartan Race. I know what it is, but I'd like for you to share not only what it is to people like me who haven't run the Spartan Race, but people like you who have. Yeah. What is the Spartan Race?
Well, let's back up to, so when I was a pretty athletic kid, and I got pretty into sports and endurance sports when I was in college. And when I got that, grim kind of diagnosis and my body was not performing very well, this was around 2006, 2007, getting into 2008. And so one of the things I had to do was basically quit hard exercise. And that's when I basically took up walking meditation and really trying to get myself back to square zero so that I could build the square one and square two and square three. And now an interesting part of this is that's a very kind of hard thing to do if you're this type of person. But the interesting thing was I realized that I really hated endurance sports. So when I looked back and I started to get an appreciation for that cumulative stress load and reducing the number of things that are on my mind. And I thought back to some of the marathons and junk that I was dabbling with. Every 10 minutes, I'm looking at my heart rate. It's beeping at me if I'm running too fast. It's beeping at me if I'm running too slow. I got to drink the red bottle every 45 minutes. I got to drink the blue bottle every 30 minutes. So this endurance sports, this kind of type A, this very sort of calculated, I can perform, I can finish this event because I have all the requisite ingredients. I've done the perfect taper. I've done everything. That is incredibly demanding on the psyche, right? And on the system. Yes. And we also, to your point, we outsource our security or our belief in ourself into our training. And when all of a sudden, I've told the story a million times about my first half marathon. I was at the starting line. I had the perfect set of sneakers that were just perfectly worn in. I had the red bottle, the blue bottle, the perfect hydration, all the different things. About 800 meters into this half marathon, I step into this huge puddle. Now I'm 1 foot, just this massive moon boot sneaker, because at the time I'm wearing like Asics or something, now weighs, 10 times more than it should. And it broke my psyche, right? Because I trained for this event. I have it perfect. And I just keep looking down at that shoe. And I'm just like, man, this is ridiculous, playing the victim, right? And so the interesting thing was I hung up all the sports and all the training, started to walk. 2010, one of my college professors says, hey, and I ran a lot of races with my college professor. He goes, hey, there's this race you got to do. It's up in Vermont. It's this lunatic putting it on. It's 5K. You're going to love it. And I just said, you know what? I need something. Like, it's been a couple of years. Let me dive into this thing. So I show up to this, what I think is a 5K.
This is getting funny.
Like, in the first mile, I'm running with a spear, throwing it at a hay bale target. I'm crawling under barbed wire, just got this huge scrape down my back. I'm getting hit with a fire hose as I'm kind of making my way through this barbed wire. I'm climbing over walls. I'm like, but I crossed the finish line. I look like, I'm like completely destroyed. You're completely covered in mud. You got scrapes, you got bruises. And I was like, I'm alive, man. Like, this is why I jumped out of a plane on my 18th birthday. This is the this is the thing. This is what we need. This is endurance sports. This is endurance sports minus all the crap. This is pure self-reliance. Like, are you going to put one foot in front of the other and finish this thing no matter what it takes? And by the way, 5K took me like 58 minutes or something, right? So it's like, I caught the bug, and my college professor happened to be good buddies with this lunatic, Joe, that was putting on this event. And, within the next couple of months, guess what? I'm working with Joe. Dr. J, my college professor, and I are designing all his training programs for this event. And, fast forward 8 years, I'm still there, and we've expanded to 30 countries. We've got at some point 1.2 million participants around the globe each year. I just departed from the organization last year to kind of do my own thing and spread my wings a little bit. But yeah, the Spartan is an amazing, amazing experience. It's this type of thing where, it really kind of gets people out of their own way, out of their own mind, gets them into the moment. You can't think. When I'm running a marathon and I'm running this, 7:30 clip or whatever, and I'm, my heart rate, you're thinking about everything except the moment. You're still thinking about the stuff you say you're stressed about. You're thinking about the things you run to get rid of, right? Or that you run to deal with. When you're getting, sprayed with a fire hose, you got barbed wire sticking out of your butt cheek, and you're about to throw a spear at a massive target at full running speed. Like, that's humanistic. That's getting you back to wherever it is we came from. And I think people cross the finish line and they're like, I haven't felt this way ever. This is the first 3 hours I've had without my cell phone in the past decade. This is what I needed. And I think that just is an incredible thing. Now, I'll say that after 8 years of that, you start to graduate into, some other tiers of whether it's consciousness or objectives or, but I think there's almost no better thing on the planet for people that are stuck to get out of their own way and prove to themselves what the hell they're capable of.
I love it. And I think it's a great experience to get into situations where we're outside of that kind of digital voyeuristic, here's my peak, here's my max, here's my optimum, giving my digital feedback, because it's almost as beautiful. And I'm a biofeedback kind of guy, because I think I was born before the digital age. And, my business partner, Matt, is very deeply down biofeedback. And one of the things that we try to correlate is our feedback with ourselves with data. And we always have these debates, him and I, and it's part of the uniqueness of our business is that we have, like, he's a keto guy, I'm a vegetarian guy. He's loves data. I'm more like, I want the qualitative experience or feedback. But you bring up something I think that's really relevant and kind of start where we started off today. And that is, how does someone access the human condition without dependency on digital technology in this world? Because it seems like everybody is now hooked into this more than they're hooked into this.
Right.
What's your experience with that? Because I know you talk about self-reliance and empowered health and fitness, and you're sharing this. So can you share more about what that is for you?
And I think, Wade is, and you're a digestive health guy, so I'll try to put this into
something terms we can digest.
Yeah, but it's such an important point, right? Like, everything in nature, you go on a hike, maybe it says like leave no trace, right? You want to fix your health. There's a lot of ways you can throw things into the system, but the most important thing the gut probably needs is you to stop throwing crap on it. Right. And that will kind of initiate a lot of the healing you need. Just like Mother Nature, leave no trace. She doesn't need you to like water the plants on the hike. She doesn't need you to like fertilize anything. You just need to not leave your junk where she has to destructed over the course of the next 150 years. So when we think about the human condition, and just like that first time I ran the obstacle race, it's like, it's inside of us, and it knows where it is, who it is. It can be reconnected. It can be rekindled. We just have to get rid of the noise. And when I first started what ended up becoming RUNGA, in reality, it was my annual vacation. And then the next year I invited Ben Greenfield and said, let's do this. And the next year we let people sign up for it. And here we are 6 or 7 years later. But the interesting thing is, this original trip was 8 days. And what we did on the first day was we actually took everybody's cell phone and locked it in a lockbox for 8 days. And some of them weren't expecting this. Now, the interesting thing was, on day one, and we obviously stopped mentioning that we did that in the advertising because people wouldn't come if they knew that was going to happen. But the first day, people are anxious. They're saying like, dude, I can feel myself. I can feel my Twitter buzzing in my pocket. My phone isn't even there. I've got like a phantom Twitter account right now, and my mind is going crazy. By day two, and I used to have like a day 1, day 2, day 3, like with different emojis. But by day 4, people are starting to really reconnect with themselves. They're realizing their brain isn't all over the place. And this is regardless. And of course, we're doing some meditation, we're doing some breath work, we're doing other things to kind of complement this. But I think removing that thing from time to time, getting people to put their phone away at 6 o'clock, getting them to put the phone away for the weekend actually makes a lot of space, even if it takes a couple of days for you to believe that that's the thing that's making the difference. But over the course of watching, over a couple of years, a couple of hundred people go without a phone for 8 days, by the 8th day, they actually don't want it back. Most people will make a joke like, I truly wish that I didn't have to take it back. I truly wish that I didn't have to let myself go down that rabbit hole. So I think so much of our problem is in our pocket. And we have the ability, we're just addicted. Like you talked about at the start of this show, these programs, these apps, the marketing, the light that's coming out of the phone, it is meant to keep you hooked. It's meant to create that adrenaline, that dopamine response. And so it's not a fair fight. So have some compassion for yourself, but recognize too that phone and that ticker and that addiction to email, that gambling, the rolling of the dice every time you check that Instagram post is creating a lot of the issues, or the self-judgment if someone doesn't like your picture enough or what have you. So I think that's kind of number one, the belief and the understanding that higher consciousness and that human spirit that we want to feel and embody is within all of us. There's just a lot of garbage on top of it. A lot of it has to do with our devices. Now, the other pieces are nutrition and lack of grounding. And that's why I tell people, get outside 20 minutes a day in the sun. And, it's hard for me right now, but I can't wait to get back to the US and to, we're going to head back to Texas. And, I wish we've been in Luxembourg for the last 9 months, but it's already full-fledged winter here, but getting into nature, it's incredible. Just, I take these walks, almost every single day through this amazing path, and whatever's going on in your mind, you spend 30 or 40 minutes walking through lush green nature. You don't have to think anything. You don't have to do anything. You just be, and all of a sudden these things start to emerge. But I think that's the big thing. It's like, if you want a clean house, you got to stop leaving stuff all over the place. And that's kind of the same thing that's happening with our minds.
So I think that's really pertinent for people to consider, to take some time out of this and to allow enough allow enough space for that decoupling from technology to kind of like, okay, let's get rid of the surface noise, right, and let's find the true signals that are getting distorted with the noise of the world. What does self-reliance and empowered health and fitness mean to you? I saw it was in your bio. These are aspects that are really important to you, and maybe how that connects with RUNGA and what all that is. Perhaps you can kind of illustrate that for us.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip: supercharge your protein shake. Everyone knows protein shakes are a great way to sneak in extra protein, build more muscle, even replace meals and burn more fat. The problem is the highest quality protein typically absorbs at around 40%. One way to fix this and dramatically increase how quickly and effective your protein shake digests is to add 2 to 3 capsules of masszymes into your shake. One research study showed that pre-digested protein during a meal increased muscle growth significantly. To take advantage of this, just blend the open capsules into your shake, and within 15 minutes or less, the enzymes will have begun to break down the protein into amino acids. This can make your shakes at least 2 to 3 times more potent. Some people do this and sip on their shake while lifting to provide their muscles with a steady stream of amino acids during their workout. To save 10% on masszymes, use the code SHAKE10, that's SHAKE10, at masszymes.com. That's SHAKE10 at masszymes.com.
Yeah, well, I think, tying closely to the information age and the just incredible amount of, one way, shape, or form marketing that's hitting us, information that's hitting us, people get completely overwhelmed. And when I say empowered health and fitness, how many people know exactly what to do substantially, right? But don't do it because there's so much other information. I'll give you a good example. I had this guy that wanted to lose a whole bunch of weight. And he says, Joe, I need a meal plan. I need a meal plan. I need to tell me what I need to eat for breakfast, what I need to eat for lunch, what I need to have for dinner, snacks, what time I should eat them, how many grams of protein I should have in there. I'll weigh it all out. I said, whoa. Do me a favor. This week, eat nothing you know is not good for you. Eat nothing you know is bad for you, and try to gravitate to things that you know are healthy for you. Right. And if you have to ask me, it's probably in the bad category, right? It's probably in the don't consume category.
Yep.
The next week I said, all right, dude, I'm going to work on your meal plan. But hey, in the meantime, continue to not eat anything you know isn't good for you, and just try to move away from some of the carbohydrates that you're eating and move towards like an extra serving of chicken or, whatever the protein is you're eating. But then other than that, just don't eat like that's. And long story short, this guy lost 30 kilos in a month. He had a lot of weight to lose. Lost 30 kilos in a month. I gave him 4 pieces of information. Don't do things that you know are bad. Eat more protein, drink more water, and move away from some of the carbohydrate. So when you think about that guy, he probably sat on his butt for a year contemplating, like, should I do this diet? Or maybe I'll do that diet. Or
probably spent months comparing and going on boards and seeing the haters and the lovers and all these different things, because it's like information or like an analysis paralysis.
Absolutely. So I really want people to start with what they know, what they have at their disposal. And even if that's a bathroom floor and maybe a kettlebell, or maybe it's just shopping at a different grocery store, whatever it is, start where you're at. What can you do with what you're at, with what you've got at your disposal, maybe who you know, what you know, and where you're at, and milk that for all you've got. And when I used to coach personal trainers, I used to say, when you have a new client, you've got 4 aces, right? Like you've got the hard workouts, you've got like the meal plans, you've got, maybe some of the supplements, you've got like some of the other hacks and things that will work for these people. You can only give the ace once. So you got to give them one of those cards and milk all you can from it before you drop that second card. Because if you give somebody all your bells and whistles on day one, they tried it and it didn't work. And now you're the next business that didn't work.
Correct.
So it's the same thing that we need to kind of look at when we start to, and with Runga, we start with creating an amazingly safe environment, because that's ultimately, I just had a fantastic podcast with a woman named Lois Laney, who's an expert in the brainstem and the cranial nerves. And when you create an environment that people feel is extremely safe and nurturing, and sometimes you'll even get them to just say, I am safe. I am safe. I'm safe sitting in this group. The more we can create an environment and an emotion of safety, and then, gratitude would be kind of the next step. the more fertile this ground is. And when that person then, starts with safety and maybe slowing down their breathing a little bit, and now we want to go learn kettlebells. Now we want to go learn how to eat a little bit better, or go through a cooking demo or whatever we might be doing. It's the upload is 10x. So we have to start with safety. And I'll tell you one more quick story is, I did this a long time ago. I did this 30-day Bikram yoga challenge, which was just miserable. It's, you do Bikram yoga, which is 90 minutes in a hot environment. You do it every single day for a month. And one day I was leaving and there was a woman that walked in and she said, she was kind of like looking around, and the guy was like, "Is this your first time here?" She says, "No, it's my 5th time here." And he goes, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't recognize you. I'm the owner and I thought I was here all the time, but it's so nice to meet you." And she goes, "Well, it's my 5th time here, but it's the first day that I ever got out of my car." And so when we think about this idea of like fitness and health and changing our diet, is so daunting for some people, that if I can get them to start with a glass of water in the morning and avoid foods are unhealthy, that proliferates into incredible decisions and more sustainable fitness, right? And so that's.
I want to just interrupt you there, because I'm curious about this. How is it that we have the zenith of technological innovation? We're probably living in the safest time ever in history. Just to give people example, there's actually more people that died in 2018 at this point in the year than have died in 2020. Now, it's supposed to be the most unsafest point in the year, but all the lockdowns and stuff probably just cut back car accidents in other areas. And it's never been safer, but there's a perception that it's never been more dangerous.
Oh my gosh.
So when you say the word safe, a little red flag goes up in my mind, because I grew up in the rough and tumble aspects of Canada in the north. And safety meant, don't put your arm in the wood chopper, it'll take it off. Don't be careless while you're driving the tractor because you'll knock the house over.
Yeah.
Pay attention when you're on the road with your car, because if you mess with the dial, you'll go in the ditch. Like, everything had like horrific consequences. We all know the kid that died in the car accidents. We all know the guy that got his leg chopped off with a power saw. We all know the guy that drowned in the fishing boat. Like, this is the world that I grew up in. It was very, very, and the communication style that comes from the senior men to the younger men is anything but pleasant. It is anything but socially safe, or I don't know, whatever the way it is. Like, it usually involves loud, coarse commands with threats of violence to prevent you from having another violence. And as terrifying as that is, as a young kid growing up, I was terrified of my dad. I was like, oh my God, if something went wrong, I was like, oh no, I'm really screwed up. Like, it was worse to deal with my dad's wrath than what might have even happened. Okay.
Right.
And looking back, I go, thank God he gave me that stuff. And my friends know me as someone that's very direct. I'm not always politically correct, but I mean what I say, and I say what I mean, and I might not finesse it out very well, but the people I care about, I'm going to communicate in a direct way. Yeah. And we can work about the nuances and how the feelings were hurt, but we need to get to the bottom of things. And that's partly because of that training. And this is the part that I find ironic. What does this safety mean? Like, what does that really mean to you? And what is all this conversation about a safe space and safe doing? Like, what does that mean? Like, I'm just curious.
Okay. Well, first of all, your old man still let you drive the tractor.
Correct.
So even though, so your dad said, Wade, you messed this thing up, man. You might not make it. If you make it, I'm going to beat you up. Right. So there's this
exactly.
So you survive the tractor accident, you know, you've got another tractor to deal with.
Exactly.
So he still let you drive the tractor. So there's this, like, I will tell you a funny story, and this is a true story. Last week, I had this incredible week, and I just chalked it up like, you know, God, spirit, universe is just kicking me out of Europe. He's like, you know, just get out of here. First of all, my computer, I'm using like a cheap outlet thing, and my computer gets fried, right? So there's some kind of spark at the wall and my computer gets fried. Then I get into the car on a rainy day and I've got a flat tire. Wait, I get this flat tire and I'm like, it's raining. I got a flat tire. It's like, I get to be a man today. Like I get to do like the world, like I'm in an insane asylum half the time, like changing a tire in the rain on the side of the highway in Luxembourg. Like, let's do this. Wait, I pop the trunk. I call Em, my wife. I'm like, hey, I got to change a tire. I just pray that it's not a donut because I got to drive all the way home. And I'm hoping they have a full-size spare in this thing, but I'll be home in an hour no matter what. I pop the back of the truck, Wade. I pull up the panel. No full-size spare. No donut. A neon vest has replaced the spare tire.
Wow.
So,
wow. It's like,
We've created a scenario where I said, Em, I think I'm supposed to put the vest on and just cast away or something. Like, you know, is there a flare gun? Like what, like what the hell am I supposed to do here? So every year, Wade, you know, with the technology, the monopolistic organizations, these governments, our comfort zones are shrinking. And we have the illusion that we're in danger all the time. And the thing about comfort zone and even running Spartan Race is like, the less you expand and experience, the fewer tractors you drive, the fewer things you deal with, the fewer tires you change, the more things are on your list of scary, dangerous, etc. And the other thing too is, man, you know, I've jumped out of planes, I've canyon waterfalls, I've fractured my skull. Like the closer you get, the more you're alive. That's the ironic thing, is your perspective when you do something that's actually dangerous occasionally and responsibly and with people you trust, etc. Sometimes you're calibrating your everyday and your resilience for your stressful boss or whatever is all of a sudden going up. But if you're afraid of, you know, if your biggest fear is getting a flat tire and, you know, you're willing to put on a neon vest and jumping jack on the side of the road or something, like there's a lot of things that can scare you if that's the level you're at. So our conditioning and the way the world is headed with this, I mean, just think about it, Wade. How many people drive to a destination that they know the way, but they still use GPS because they can't risk that minute of traffic that they could otherwise avoid if they entrust their safety and security into this device that's going to tell us you can avoid that 30-second traffic halt by taking 15 turns through a residential neighborhood. So there's this, like, the amount of times throughout the day and the week that we actually rely on our own willpower, our own minds, our own creativity, our own resourcefulness is shrinking with every passing day. And therefore, there's more and more things that are so far outside our comfort zone. And we need this security and safety theater all around us, right? We need the masks, we need the social distance, we need the things at the airport, we need all this kind of theater to make us feel safe, but it's all a show.
I was reading something there. So here's a confession for people. I'm very concerned with the state of the world. I'm very concerned with how people are kind of passively looking at the world. And I think you can relate to this, as we talked early about. And I was thinking, you know, when the whole thing happened with the concern about North Korea and things like that, there was a lot of research that said, hey, you know what, there could be it'd be very easy for a rogue nation, whether that would be North Korea or even Russia or China or one of these nuclear capable countries, to detonate a nuclear warhead at 250 miles above North America, which would knock out 90% of the power grid. And I'm like, well, if I wanted to take over the country, or if I wanted to kind of eliminate the United States from its dominance, that seems like a pretty easy thing to do. Any one of those countries could probably pull that off.
Right.
Which you got to wonder, I mean, like, okay, well, how dependent is my life on all of this tech? And if you think about it, your banking, your hire, your power, all of your communications, the grocery store, your car, like you can just go down the list of the electronics that you have that are smoked in one of these conditions. Now, amplify that by all of the people living in the country and where you might think they're at from a responsiveness. And I thought it would be absolute chaos.
Mayhem.
Perhaps enough that the country wouldn't even recover from it.
Right.
But I also know there would be people who would survive it, who would get past it and would kind of go back to that. You talk about Runga, you talk about finding your tribe, self-reliance, empowered health, empowered fitness. All I'm leading that to is, can you explain what Runga is and why those things are so important with why you teach these aspects of self-reliance and getting away from your digital communication, like you mentioned, and stuff like that? Can you drop into that for a minute, and why? I want you to impart this to our listeners, because it's something I'm very passionate about. Is like, what are you going to do when crap comes to town? Because history has shown that sooner or later, really bad things happen.
Right. Right on, Wade. And I'll also just tack on to your statements that I recently read that I think it's LA. So I was looking at the major cities. There's basically enough food in LA to get through. It's under 3 days.
Yeah.
So like if that happened, even if you can walk to the store or whatever, all the food is gone in 3 days if shipping, receiving, import.
We saw that at the first of the pandemic.
Exactly.
You walked into the stores, they were empty.
They've got enough toilet paper for 45 minutes. It's the
Yeah, which I've always find like you're collecting toilet paper. Like you can't eat that stuff.
Oh my gosh. No, I know. I just like shared a picture. Barstool Sports has just been so like comical on
yeah, they'd be great.
There's this picture of these older folks, like, you know, highest risk category for the flu. And, you know, they've got a grocery cart. The thing is fully filled with beer. Right. It's like, it's like, is there some vitamin D in there, man? Come on. Like, let's get some vitamin C in that cart. Well, here's the deal, Wade. And like you said, like eventually bad things happen. And it's all about that ability to deal with it. And this is kind of tying back where the self-reliance piece, you know, in many ways, it ties back to where this conversation started, and that kind of desire I had, or that kind of impulse, or that need to prove that I was okay, right? And prove that I was being self-reliant. I'm good. I can take care of myself. You don't have to worry about me. You're a mess. Like, you know, I got it. And so I think that's actually where this was born. But I think that like when we do quiet the mind, so that when we practice, it's like the premeditation of evils. So if we practice what it would be to not have a cell phone for 8 days, we practice what it would be to, you know, fast for 24 hours or 48 or 72 or longer if you're
a week. Yeah.
So I think we need these exposures. It gets back to the Spartan. It gets back to, you know, laying down a waterfall. It's like when you expose yourself to these things, there's more things that are less scary to you. But I think the bigger thing is you realize what you're capable of. And if you clear the noise, when things go awry, when things hit the fan, you can rely on that intuitive spirit and that resourcefulness that you've made space for to guide you.
Right.
But if your first exposure to adversity is without any conditioning or exposure to anything close, you're going to be a disaster. You're going to be running around in the streets. You're going to put the vest on without a flat tire. You're going to just give up. And when we think about so much of whether it's just the, we can look at just the deterioration of our emotional health through this crisis of 2020 and the way that it's divided people, it's because no one has any trust in anyone, including themselves. And so we're creating this scenario where no one can rely on themselves. So how could I rely on you? And there's this like everyone against everyone environment. So I think that's what we're trying to do with Runga, is to give people some exposure into these sustainable practices, what we call free medicine, in an environment that allows them to really quickly glean the benefits of those practices, see how powerful they are, see that there are people around also with these belief systems, with this energy, this open-heartedness, this kindred nature, so that they know A, they're not alone, and B, they have a collection of practices that they can rely on that are going to be here no matter what. And this gets into, I think, another mutual friend of ours with Ben Greenfield, and the way that we're raising our son. Mm-hmm. One of the big things that Ben taught me is that, with kids especially, it's so important to have these kind of rituals and traditions. And so when we think about we were just talking about Friday night is pizza night, and Friday night is pizza night because even if our house blows down, even if we're, floating on a raft in the middle of the ocean, we'll find a way to make a damn pizza on Friday night, because that's going to anchor my kid into this place where he knows he is safe. It's Friday night and it's pizza night, and I am safe, and anything else is just up to me to deal with. So I think there are these pieces of the puzzle that we need to also anchor into our lives. So these exposures to adversity, this practice with these practices, with these skills. And if you want to go and start hunting in the woods, do it. That's great too. And then also, how are you anchoring yourself if things were to fall away? What anchors do you have to some sort of groundedness in your life that allows you to feel safe? And those types of activities and that type of work and practice, I think, is ultimately going to separate the people that are going to make it and the people that are going to not.
Super important. So I think you said something that's really cool too, because we've never been in a more connected yet disconnected world. And one of the things that you talk about with Runga is finding your tribe, because as soon as you break away from, whatever group that's making you feel unsafe or fearful or inability to achieve your goals or whatever, you have to realize that's a collection of the belief systems of the people that you spend your time with. And I always say environment is stronger than will. And so if you want a different result, you need to insert yourself in a different way. So if I want to learn jujitsu, I need to start going to a jujitsu gym. If I want to go to yoga, I got to start going to a yoga gym. If I want to be an internet marketer, I got to start hanging around internet marketers. You need to immerse yourself in the culture, the belief systems, and the various people who are ahead of you, who are people you aspire to be to, and maybe people who are like you. I want you to give us your best pitch right now. Tell us who's Runga is for, why it's so important for them, and how do they get involved with Runga?
Yeah, man. So you are absolutely the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And I think that a lot of people have trouble kind of controlling who those 5 people are, right? The 5 people that they're with the most, maybe it's a boss that you didn't pre-select. Maybe it's the, whatever the case may be, right? And so one of the big pieces with Runga is we bring people together. It's an application process for our main events. And we actually curate this group of folks that we think are going to be really amazing together. And so when people come in and they see people just like them with similar interests, with similar goals, with similar ambitions, it gives them permission. First of all, they've got this backbone in this community now that they can rely on, and the lifelong relationships that have been started at our weekends. There's every year, basically everyone is still in touch. There's huge text threads. We've got the online tribe now. And so that's kind of number one. But the big thing too, is like when you feel and you sink into that tribe at an event like this, and you rub elbows for the weekend and you share stories, when you go home, that any feelings of isolation or that you're all alone or that you're working towards something that no one else sees falls away. And all of a sudden you're far more empowered, even if you're around the world. You know, we've had people from India and UK, and even if you're halfway around the world, you take that energy with you. And now you see this tribe doing things and you can elevate yourself. And that's one of the big reasons we launched the online community, so that people have an easier gateway and access point to this community of people. And as we kind of expand, there's going to be more and more niche groups within that tribe doing certain things like internet marketers or anybody else. So I think that that's a huge piece. And I think right now, with the way the world's going, I think over the last decade or so, it's how many downloads can you get? How many followers can you get?
Right.
And we're starting to see the beginning that it's quality over quantity. Did these people really connect and mean something to you and add value to you? And when we look at this, how come, when we look at like the energy, right? And you can be halfway around the world, but, look at like birds flying in the sky. How do they all know it's time to take a right? How do they all know, all at the same time? Because there's just this incredible energy, the human spirit, and the way that we connect and share with each other can empower massive change. And I think when people feel that, whether it's through a Zoom call or whether you're sitting face to face at dinner, sharing a meal, all our meals are family style at RUNGA for that reason, because we're all just in this together. And I think when you feel that, you start to move, and all the birds start to move together, and they've got their tribe. They don't need everything else, and everything else can kind of fall away if it must. So I think that there's a lot of permission slips and a lot of perspective that people leave with that generally leads to them accomplishing amazing things in the months and years that follow an event. And we have seen just incredible transformation. I mean, we hosted a one-day experience in Venice, and we had a woman, I was on the phone with her the other day. I hadn't talked to her since our one-day event. She lost something like 60 pounds in 6 months after the event. Again, like we started with, no meal plan, no nothing. But what did she have? She had 10 people she spent that weekend with that she could talk to on Instagram and Facebook and the online community. And that's really all she needed. So I think that's what we're trying to really share is essentially energy. And when that energy exchange happens, people are capable of just amazing, amazing things.
Joe, where can people reach you? Facebook, email, Twitter, all that sort of stuff. Give us all your handles. We'll drop them in the notes, but please share it with our listeners.
Yeah, so I'm Coach Joe DI everywhere. Instagram's where I spend most of my time, but I'm more and more moving into our tribe and really kind of nurturing that environment more than the thousands of people that maybe on Instagram follow me. So RUNGA is rungalife.com, and it's also at RUNGALife on Instagram. If you go to the rungalife.com website and click tribe, you can jump into the tribe that I'm talking about. It's free for a month. And so we're really in this beta state. And Jan 1, we've got so many programs and recipe books and mindfulness groups and book clubs launching. It's just going to be so spectacular. But I'm Coach Joe DI everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. My email is hey@coachjoedi.com. If anybody wants to send me a note, that's my email address that I share on the podcast, and people can send whatever they want. And I do my best to reply. Sometimes I do have some help, but I think it's important for people to be able to send their questions and things. And then I've got my podcast, which is called Stacked with Joe DiStefano. I do a Friday AMA with a lot of the questions that I receive through the week. Either it's from my email or from messages on Instagram or comments. And so continuing to put that out. And you've been a guest on my show, Wade. And, the interviews go live on Tuesday, and the show has really grown a lot. So I'd invite people to kind of check that out as well. And yeah, hey, thank you so much for the hour or so, Wade. It's just been such a pleasure and honor to be here.
You bet. So, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. It is Joe DiStefano and self-reliance, empowered health and fitness, and finding your tribe. Check out RUNGA. Check out what he and his team are doing. It's an incredible way and community that allows you to overcome the obstacles that are holding you back from being your best person. So get over there, check it out. Thanks so much for joining us today. That's another edition of the Awesome Health Show with Way-T Lightheart from Bioptimizers. Be well.
And now for a Bioptimizers fixed digestion tip. Turn cultured foods into superfoods. Raw fermented foods like sauerkraut and low sugar live yogurt can be good for you, but rarely have enough of the right probiotic strains for therapeutic benefit. So here's a way that you can turn them into superfoods. What I do is I get some raw sauerkraut or a healthy yogurt. Ideally, it's grass-fed or coconut-based, and you can empty 3 caps of P3OM into a container and mix it up thoroughly. Leave it at room temperature for a couple of hours before putting it back into the fridge. And what's going to happen is these probiotic levels will be multiplied. In fact, it doubles every 20 minutes. And then what you're going to get is you're going to have a food with strong proteolytic activity. To learn more about P3OM and why its patented strains make it the strongest probiotic available, go to www.bioptimizers.com.
Thank you for listening to the Bioptimizers Awesome Health Podcast. You can find more information at bioptimizers.com.